Hi, welcome to Top Beer. And on today's show, TopBeer Crew go for a winter warmer in Dudley. We have a rummage in Santa's sack to see what Christmas beers he delivered. I look back at the rise and fall of pubs in Brierley Hill, followed by a quest to the remaining survivors to see if they tickle our ale tasting buds. An interview with a Camra taster and taste trainer, also noted for her varying headwear. We show you the complex process of beer from dray to tap. Twinkle Toes Swig is at it again, but this time with bells on. And TopBeer Crew host their first quiz night at the Green Duck Brewery.
Just before we hit the Christmas madness season, the TopBeer Crew popped along to the Dudley Winter Ale Fair being held at the Dudley Town Hall, which opened to the public on Thursday the 26th of November. The crew were first in line as the doors opened on the Saturday, which was the final day of the fair, organised once again by Dudley and South Staffordshire Camra. The front of the official programme sported a very festive Holden's logo, which we thought was a nice addition, acknowledging not just the brewery's 100-year anniversary, but also recognising the years of support they have given the event. There were in excess of 70 different ales available to taste, along with real ciders and perries and a selection of foreign bottled beers. As usual, local breweries were well represented, with 10 breweries supplying over 15 of the ales on sale. So, what is a winter ale? Well, generally they tend to have a high ABV, which becomes associated with the warmth that lingers on the finish. Also known as strong ales, old ales and winter warmers, these multi-sweet offerings can be found cropping up in bars as the nights start drawing in and the temperature starts to drop. Enticing smells of Christmas pudding, dark fruits, toffee and caramel, with a colour that tends to be dark, full in body, rich and fruity in taste, these beers are a great companion to shake off the winter chill. With over 40 ales on offer at 5% and higher, you are guaranteed to stay warm. We were not long into our first beers when the afternoon entertainment started and got the increasing crowd going with some classic songs. Liquid Brass, a versatile 10-piece contemporary brass band, banged out tune after tune, which was something we could have listened to until they called last orders. The crew even managed to get on stage with the Swig taking control on the drums. Next on stage was an auction of 40 beer related items, with all proceeds going to charity. The TopBeer Crew were fortunate to win 3 items that we bid on, which included a bottle of Christmas Ale brewed and bottled by Shepherd's Brewery, a bottle of Black Country Celebration Ale brewed and bottled by Holden's, and a bottle of Jaguar beer brewed to celebrate 50 years since the creation of the Jaguar XK120. The Swig also managed to win something, picking up a 1966 World Cup Willie pennant. Happy with our purchases, we took in some food, which was provided and served up by Little Devil's Diner, whose menu consisted of the Black Country delicacy grey peas, as well as hot pork cobs, sandwiches and samosas. I never tried the grey peas, but the rest was quite tasty. We was up for a treat next as the Sedgley Morris Men took to the floor to perform some traditional dancing for us, with a little audience participation I might add. Beer started to run low as the day went on, which was a little disappointing, but serves us right for turning up on the final day of the event. However, we managed to try all that was on offer, which was still a considerable choice. Greenway played us out in the final hours of the festival with covers of some quality rock tunes. We didn't stay till the death. Some 9 hours later we decided to call it a night, having tried all the beers available. Always a lovely touch at the end of the night is the collection of any unused beer tokens to go towards Camra's chosen charities, which this year featured We Love Carers Dudley and Black Country Living Museum Tram 5 Appeal. We have been reliably informed that over £1,600 was raised towards these causes, which is excellent stuff. Over the weeks leading up to and over Christmas, we had the opportunity to sample a range of Christmas beers that had been popping up in and around the bars and breweries we were visiting. There tends not to be many rules as to how these are brewed, with many made with a traditional fruit and spice mix associated with the festive period, while others played around with a malt and hop combo to produce a wonderful complex flavour, their colours ranging from a light amber gold through to a dark stouty winter look. During this time we sampled many different brews, with offerings from local breweries Sadler's, Fixed Wheel and Green Duck, along with the Top Beer Tavern of the Month December winner, the Swan in Halesowen, who all provided a conveyor belt of different ales over the festive period, including 1 or 2 Christmas beers of their own. However, it wasn't just local ales we sampled, as there were other ales from a variety of brews from all over the country. We have selected 6 to review from the ones we sampled, which included Reindeer by Sadler's, Scrooge by Sadler's, Christmas Pudding Stouts by Fixed Wheel, Duck the Halls by Green Duck, Christmas Season's Best by Prescott, Christmas Cracker by Tetley's, Rudolph's Ruin by Springhead, Rockin' Rudolph by Hardy and Hanson's, Christmas Cracker by Woods, Kris Kringle by Backyard, Oh Ho Ho by Otley, and Mad Elf by Nailers. So, on to the review of the 6 beers. First up is St Peter's Christmas Ale. This beer poured a red amber in colour with a small light beige head which left a thin lace down the glass. There was a strong roasted malt aroma about it that had fruity tones comprising of raisin, plum and some orange. It was full-bodied and lightly warming with a decent level of carbonation. There was plenty of fruitiness in the flavour with a hint of port, finishing with a balanced spicy bitterness. Subtle notes of dark fruit hoppiness were detected in the aftertaste, however this was short-lived, which was a little disappointing. This was an enjoyable beer that was well balanced for its strength and carried a Christmassy feel about it. We awarded this one 20 out of 25. A pleasant winter warmer for those cold nights. Next up was Raucous Reindeer by Oakham. This one poured a lovely clear gold topped with a creamy white head that held a good lacing. The aroma had a light to moderate toasted grain with fruitcake and a hint of orange. The flavour had a light to medium sweet bitter malty character with fruity overtones that lingered behind the scenes. The taste carried a firm hoppiness throughout which wasn't overpowering. The body was light to medium with just the right amount of carbonation to allow the flavour out. There was a strong bitterness to the aftertaste with a touch of caramel and a dry, slightly smoky finish which the TopBeer Crew were not too fond of. This was a decent Christmas brew which didn't go overboard on the traditional spices of the season. We scored this one 19 out of 25. A solid beer which we have come to expect from Oakham's. Beer number 3, Bar Humbug by Witchwood. The pour of this Christmas ale was dark orange brown with a foamy tan head that unfortunately receded to wisps of film shortly after pouring. The smell of Christmas cake was strong on the nose, with the aromas of spices and banana that gave it a very festive feel which was very pleasing. However, the taste didn't live up to the smell and came across as a bit flat for us. It was sweet, malty with a banana note. It had a heavy body with a subtle warming of cinnamon and spice, along with a slightly hoppy bitterness, but for us it was a pretty straightforward ale. The aftertaste was short and bitter with a banana drop, which dried the palate, which wasn't very appealing. This was an alright beer, however it was sort of flat in flavour and complexity with a very apparent alcoholic taste. This one split the crew, with all loving the smell, but we couldn't agree on the taste and aftertaste. We awarded it 18 out of 25. If the taste could match the smell, this would be a fantastic beer in my opinion. On to the 4th beer, Blitzen by Black Sheep. This beer poured an attractive reddish copper colour with an off-white head that lasted well into the drink. There was a light treacle toffee malt aroma to this one with a light smoke and muted hops. The initial taste was dry and nutty which opens up into a sweet burnt caramel flavour with a little spice, giving it a light tangy quality. However, it appeared to be missing body which was unfortunate. There was a watery bitterness to the finish with some spicy notes, but overall it was pleasing. This wasn't a bad brew, just a little thin for the start for us. We gave this one 18 out of 25. Not sure about it being a Christmas ale though, it came across as more of a bitter to us. On to the fifth beer, Bad Santa by Backyard. This beer poured a deep dark brown with a decent beige head which laced down the glass lovely. The smell of this one filled your head with all kinds of Christmas aromas that were full of rich, dark fruit and spices with a touch of smoke. Those were present in the taste too, which was initially sweet with hints of toffee, raisin and roasted malts ending with a spice. There was a slight bitterness to the aftertaste, however the spices provided a warm, satisfying mouthfeel. This was a very enjoyable beer which I could have drank all night. It was very moorish and pretty much stayed in my hand until it was finished, which didn't take long. We awarded Bad Santa 24 out of 25, a fantastic seasonal beer, which we are hoping will be back out again in time for next Christmas. And the final beer on the list is Swig Pudding Stout by TopBeer Brewing. This wouldn't be a proper review if we didn't rate our very own Christmas ale. This was only the second homebrew that TopBeer Brewing had attempted, and I must say, it wasn't a bad attempt. The appearance of this one was basically black with one finger of a thick tan head. Both the retention and lacing were excellent throughout. The nose was earthy with some piney winter spice with just a touch of smoke. The taste had just the right amount of sweetness underneath a warm spice flavour which introduced hints of dark fruit, cinnamon and nutmeg. There was a light carbonation to it which worked well, however the mouthfeel was a little watery and on the thin side for the style, which was a little disappointing, but something to work on for future brews. There was a sweetness to the back end that lingered into the aftertaste along with a subtle cinnamon note. Unfortunately this was replaced by a slight metallic tang to the finish which I was not best pleased with. This was not an overly complex beer, but it was a nice tasting Christmas stout which we will be brewing again with a few tweaks along the way. We gave it 18 out of 25, a score we are hoping to add to next Christmas. Now, one of the best things about Christmas beers is the creative names that the breweries come up with. This year's winning name for us had to be Duck the Halls by Green Duck, which did put a smile on our faces. Let's see what we can come up with next year, guys. Brierley Hill has somewhat of a young history. Having started off as an area for early settlement in the 1700s, it began to expand over the years and become heavily industrialised by the beginning of the 19th century. Ribbon development started to occur along the lanes that surrounded the hill, with quarries, collieries, glassworks and ironworks filling the spaces between the newly built housing. As the number of workers employed in the area increased, it is no wonder that taverns started to pop up in and around the area. The first 5 pubs emerged in 1818, starting with the Old Whimsy on Church Street, with a further 10 opening over the next 4 years. As the years passed us by, there was a steady growth of bars and taverns appearing on the newly built streets of Brierley Hill, especially in 1834, which saw 11 new premises open their doors for business. By 1849, a total of 52 taverns had opened across Brierley Hill and Quarry Bank. However, the 1800s were not without its casualties, as 5 taverns closed during this 31-year period. As the area continued to develop due to the rising population, many more watering holes began to appear, with a further 21 opening before 1857. This is the year that saw the opening of the Round Oak Steelworks that created thousands of new jobs. However, the reintroduction of the Wine and Beer House Act 1869 now required a licence to be granted to be able to sell beer on premises. Furthermore, gaming, prostitution and any form of undesirable behaviour on licensed premises would now be regulated, which would see landlords under threat of forfeiting their licence. Records show that many licensees were brought before the court for various infractions, such as serving drunks, keeping dirty premises or opening outside the allocated hours. By the end of the century, Brierley Hill had itself become a town. The influx of people descending upon the area had seen a rise in the number of taverns opening their doors to the public. With job opportunities aplenty, a staggering 81 establishments have put themselves on the map since the opening of the steelworks. But as one door opens, another one shuts, with 19 pubs closing their doors for good. The turn of the century saw a slump in local industry as excavation and manufacture of raw materials began to decline due to the shortage of mineral deposits. Only one new pub was built during the next 50 years in 1922. However, 14 fell victim before the start of the Great War in 1914, with a further 5 closing during the conflict. Between 1918 and the start of World War II in 1939, another 23 taverns poured their last pints. The war didn't help the cause, taking an additional 21 out of existence, 14 of them in 1 year, including one of the first pubs to be built, the Old Whimsy, in 1941, who called time after 123 years of trade. With so much happening over the first 50 years of the 20th century in regards to job losses and 2 world wars, it comes as no surprise that the 62 pubs fell victim with just 1 addition to the area. "34 years passed before a new pub opened its doors in Brierley Hill, with the opening of the Commercial in 1956, followed by both the Corn and Royal Exchanges that opened some 27 years later in 1983. The slump in industry had taken its toll on the town, and having had to make cuts in personnel over a few years to stay afloat, the Round Oak Steelworks itself shut its doors for good in 1984, with the land left as a waste area until building began of the Merriall Centre. Only 7 pubs opened from 1950, and as we wave goodbye to the 20th century, we wave goodbye to another 28 pubs, which included the Bottle and Glass, which closed in 1979 and was taken down brick by brick in 1980 to be relocated and re-erected at the Black Country Museum in 1982, and also the closure of the Three Furnaces Tavern, who after 165 years decided to call time in 1983. With the start of the new millennium, it may have been wishful thinking that we would see the rebirth of the pub trade, especially with the new shopping centre in full swing and additional developments ongoing, but this wasn't to be. Only 2 new bars appeared, one actually attached to Merrihill, named after Abram Darby, who was born in Dudley and who played an important role in the industrial revolution of the area. Unfortunately, there was to be no revolution in regards to the pubs and taverns of the area, with 23 more pubs succumbing to the times. And it's with great sadness we bid farewell to pubs that had served the community for many a year and had stood the test of time with over 150 years of service under their belts, with the longest serving being the Waterloo on Mill Street, which closed after 196 years in 2014. The average lifespan of a pub in Brierley Hill worked out to be 80 years, which in modern terms is quite an achievement. There are a few pubs still clocking up the years, with the New Wellington, the Old Crown and the Talbot, all situated on Brettle Lane, still trading, having opened in 1822. As the years pass us by, times change, people change, towns change, and inevitably the demand in those areas change. Having seen 164 pubs and taverns open in the vicinity of Brierley Hill and Quarry Bank since the beginning of 1818, only 27 remain open, the others having been demolished, turned into restaurants and retail outlets, or sadly left derelict.
So we are now aware that there are 27 pubs still standing in Brierley Hill and Quarry Bank. What we intend to do now is go and visit each and every one of them to find out which ones are selling ale.
The criteria for this is quite simple. Does the pub have a hand pull? And more importantly, is it being used?
Right, without further ado, let's start the quest. Follow us.
The first pub on the quest was Abram Darby. This pub is owned by J.D. Wetherspoons. The first thing that catches your eye when you walk in is the array of hand pulls on the bar, and I hasten to add, all being used as well. There was 4 resident ales on with a further 6 guest ales. The quality wasn't bad either. A short walk up the road brought us to the Marston's Own Brewer's Wharf, which sounded very promising. However, the name in itself is a little misleading. We came upon 3 hand pulls with only 2 being used, 1 resident ale and 1 guest on offer. Both were served really cold, which did nothing for the flavour. We did notice they had 4 taps assigned to Amstel, which we found very curious. Needless to say, we weren't there long. A hop, skip and a jump out of the door and we found ourselves at another pub owned by J.D. Wetherspoons called the Waterfront Inn. Straight away we clocked the 5 pulls on the bar, all being used might I add. The barkeeps here were a friendly bunch who served us 2 resident ales and 3 guest ales, 2 of which were of outstanding quality. A longer walk up the road brought us to another Marston's Own tavern called the Blue Brick. We were anticipating lots from this old building, however, what I didn't anticipate was being accosted outside the pub by the landlady, demanding to know why we were taking pictures of her pub. We ventured inside to explain our quest. We were greeted by 7 handpulls, which looked promising. However, only 2 were being used for the resident ales. We soon beat a hasty retreat after sampling these. A short walk down the road found us at the Dog and Lamppost. Imagine our surprise, especially the Swigs, when we found the doors locked, only to find out that it had closed for good 5 days previous to our visit. However, onwards and forwards. And we went and found ourselves next to the Rose and Crown. What a delightful place this was. The tavern was owned by Holden's, which was evident with the 4 resident ales they had on offer, along with both of the guest ales. All handpulls were in use. The ales were of a good standard and both the staff and clientele were polite and friendly. Just around the corner we came upon a Black Country Ales pub called the Brockmore House. The Swig and Tone ventured inside whilst I took the usual photo of the pub before heading inside myself, only to be informed that they didn't sell ale, which I was taken aback by considering the owners. A short trek down the road landed us outside the Old Star. There might as well have been a revolving door there, as both the Tone and the Swig went in and came straight back out, hands aloft on the side of them shaking their head, having found no ale inside. Some 15 to 20 minutes later we arrived just off Brierley Hill High Street and outside the King's Head. We walked straight into the 3rd pub on the bench with no ale. We did stay for a drink at this one as there were a couple of decent box ciders on offer. That and the fact that we had walked just short of a mile past 3 pubs without reply. Back onto the High Street and into the Three Crowns, which is part of the Stanhowen Group. A nice little boozer with 4 handpulls on display with 3 in use, serving guest ales on our visit. The standard was excellent and so was the service. We engaged in conversation with both the landlord and the clientele and found ourselves ordering another round whilst we was there. This was a really pleasant pub. As night descended upon us, we hit the next pub along called the Red Lion. Yet another pub that didn't sell ales. A little further down the road found us at one of the oldest pubs in the area, the New Talbot. 6 handpulls on display as we entered, but once again, to our dismay, only 1 was in use for a residential ale. With only 4 different ales tried in the last 6 pubs, we were hoping for a few residential beers as we made our way down to the Bull's Head, the second Black Country Ales pub on our route. Well, there were 3 handpulls on the bar when we walked in, but only 1 in use, and that wasn't a Black Country Ale either, but it was residential. However, we sampled the 1 ale and we did have a very pleasant conversation with the landlady before moving on. Just up the road was the Old Crown, another pub that dates back to the early 1800s. Sadly though, at just gone 7 PM the place was closed, so off on our travels we went again. The New Wellington was just a stone's throw away down the hill. 6 pulls greeted us on entry, but sadly once again only 1 of them was in use with the resident ale. However, there was a beer board on the wall advertising different ales, which having spoken to a group of regulars, they informed us that the owner was looking at getting these in shortly. So this pub may be worth another visit in the near future. Onto the Delph and into the Bell. Another 6 handpulls adorned the bar, but once again only 2 were in use were residentials, which unfortunately had been the story for a few hours and too many pubs now. Up to the 10th lock, another pub owned by Marston's and yet another pub in short supply of ale, with 2 handpulls on the bar and only 1 being utilised, which we could only assume was a guest ale based on the confused response we received. At least when we walked into the Black Horse a few feet up the road, who had 2 handpulls on the bar, they had them both in use, even if it was for the same resident ale. Next up was the Vine, owned by Bavham's. This was our first visit to the pub, which had an abundance of Victorian ambience about it. 2 pulls on the bar selling 2 resident ales of Bavham's own, which weren't a bad drop either. Across the road we entered the Corn Exchange, which had its fair share of youth in there. Based on this, we were surprised to find 3 handpulls on the bar, with 2 of them in use. Admittedly, we didn't see anyone drinking ale while we were in there, but the ale we had tasted fine. A short amble down the road to the roadbook and the handpull tally appeared to be rising, as we were greeted with 4 with 3 in use for 2 resident ales and 1 guest. All 3 were of a decent standard as well. Out to the pub, back up the road, past the Corn Exchange and round the corner to the Brickmakers Arms, who had 5 handpulls with ales on 3 of them, 1 open to guest ales. Things were looking up with 10 ales sampled in 5 pubs, however that was about to change as we walked into the Round Oak to see 3 handpulls on the bar, only to be told we don't sell ale, mate. The church tavern was heaving when we arrived, which is always a good sign. The tops of 4 handpulls were visible over the shoulders of the clientele, but on approach to the bar there were only 2 available, which were decent enough. The penultimate pub was just around the corner, and we were pleasantly surprised to walk into a very homely pub indeed as we stepped into the White Horse. There were 4 pools on the bar and 3 being used, and I may add, to a decent standard too. As we headed down to our last pub of the quest, we were hoping that we was going to finish on a high. We entered the Wagon and Horses and saw 4 pools on the bar with just the one word jumping out at us: Doom, from the only ale they served. So, what has the quest revealed about Brierley Hill and Quarry Bank? We've established the following. Of the 91 hand pools we came across, only 52 of them were being used for ales, which calculates to only 57% usage. Of the ones being employed, 32% were for guest ales, while 68% were for resident ales. The most popular resident ales were Doom Bar, found in 5 pubs, Holden's Golden Glow, found in 3 pubs, and Banks's Bitter, found in 3 pubs as well. The TopBeer Crew's top 6 pubs for ales were the Abraham Derby, the Waterfront Inn, the Rose and Crown, the 3 Crowns, the White Horse, and the Roebuck.
If you've ever taken the time to read the side of a bottle of ale, you would have seen the tasting notes. This is what the brewery expects that you'll taste of their beer. We were fortunate enough to meet with a professional taster from Camra, who gave us her insight into the role of a taster and a taste trainer.
We encourage people to taste beer. We make the notes, the tasting notes for the Good Beer Guide. We all have a certain amount of training, which means that we recognise different things in beers, and I progressed on from that to training other people to taste and also to offering tutored tastings. I had 20 years of practice drinking lots of different beer, and then I just found that I had something to say that people wanted to listen to. It was very much just talking about tasting things in the pub, talking about matching, talking about other things, and suddenly thinking, I could do this. Yeah. And then trying it out and finding out, yeah, I can do this. All of the above. As I said, 20 years of practice, 20 years of wandering around before I started, but after that I did some training. I've done 2 lots of training with Camra, training to taste and training to train, and I've also read plenty of books, done plenty of research on my own, sometimes in a panic. Yeah. I love that question. I have no problem at all with foliage. Foliage is fine. But from the serious point of the question, that was what I was most worried about, actually. I was most worried that I would meet a lot of people who thought that they knew far more than I did, that didn't want to listen. And in actual fact, I've had completely the opposite reaction. I had a lovely man. I was at Birmingham Festival doing a tasting this year, and I had a lovely gentleman of the older school that I really thought was going to be my problem. You know, you eye him up and you think, you. And he was asking a lot of very, very complicated questions, but at the end of it came over and gushed about how wonderful it was, and how Camra women are the future of the organisation, and started trying to invite me to various beer festivals. It was fantastic. Well, it's really a choice between being known as the mad woman in the hat or the fat girl, and I'd rather be the mad woman in the hat. Also, I love hats.
So it's always been a thing for yourself, the hat then? You always had a hat, or just? Not
so much. When I was first involved with Camra in my teens, I was the woman with the cape. Okay. I had a long velvet cape and a hood.
Superhero.
Sort of Scottish Widows adverts, yeah. Except mine was green. Anything that gets more people drinking beer is fantastic. I actually prefer cask as a method of dispense normally. I'm not a fizzy drinks person at all, but I love some of the different flavours that are coming out, and I do appreciate that it gives a lot of places a chance to sell more beers. because the containers last so much longer. There's much more of a shelf life on the craft keg beers. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is good.
No.
No?
No, definitely not. It depends on my mood and on the day. I'd probably drink more pale hoppy light beers than I do anything else, but that's really because dark beers can sometimes slow me down a bit, but some of my favourite beers are dark.
Yeah.
So, and I love IPA.
Yes, I would.
Now that's a very good question as well. I think that if I was on a desert island, I think what I want to take is a really large vat of something lovely, pale and hoppy, and hope that I got picked up before it got warm. Because I think the cellar conditions in a desert island are a bit of an issue. But I think probably I'd have Oakham Citra for that. But if you were to ask me which 3 beers I'd like to take to a country cottage in the Yorkshire Dales, then I'd go for Ilkley Origins the Mayan, which is wonderful. It's only one of their specials, but it's fantastic. And Brass Castle Bad Kitty and Fixed Wheel of Murta.
Oh god, yeah, absolutely. One of the best. They're only 25 out of 25.
Yes, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it is lovely.
Everyone needs to understand that everyone's palate is different. And so what I taste isn't necessarily what you taste, and what you taste doesn't make you wrong.
Yeah.
It's having the gumption to get up and say what you can taste, and also to just enjoy your own beer. Again, everyone has different tastes.
Yeah.
It's something I'm quite new to. I had a lovely lady called Christine Crine came down to Birmingham this year and did cheese pairings and chocolate pairings, and I learnt an awful lot from her, and it is something that I've started to go around and think about.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, I'm still learning. I'm really still learning. The people that you meet in the beer you get to try.
Yeah. Exactly.
Simple as that. A few of the people that I meet.
Some of the beers.
Yeah. Yeah, and the occasional beer. Yes. But in general, it's a very, very positive thing to do.
Yeah.
But yes, you do get some days.
Yeah.
I've got quite a lot of festival tastings coming up, which very exciting. Some quite high profile ones actually. And apart from that, I'm just working on expanding the tasting panel, and I should do a lot more for Camra as well. I edit the Birmingham magazine as well. Barrel of Brum, yeah, that's something that I do. So I'll be very busy. Drink more beer.
Yes.
I shouldn't be telling you guys that actually.
We don't need to be told. We've learned that ourselves, haven't we? I mean, have you ever thought about a question that's on there with yourself? I mean, obviously you're getting into the tasting side now. Have you ever thought about doing a book yourself?
Yes, sometimes. Sometimes when I tell stories about being a female beer drinker in the late 1980s,
yeah,
that's the sort of time that I start thinking there's a few bits here that I should write down. But yeah, I need a lot of editing.
Good diary, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Sally, I really appreciate your time and thank you. I've learned quite a bit today, actually. It's quite nice, and obviously we'll get this share out to everybody else for them to learn as well. So thank you
Brilliant.
for your time.
Thank you very much. And I now need to change my hat and go and celebrate Burns Night in Birmingham.
The pub plays an integral part in many of our lives. Some of us come here to socialise with friends and family, or for different family gatherings, whilst others come here to meet colleagues after work, or to raise a glass for a loved one who's no longer with us. Whatever the reason is for your visit to the local tavern, it is surprising how many people are unaware of the work that goes on behind the scenes by landlords and landladies up and down the country who ensure that the beer that you drink in their pub is kept right for your enjoyment. It is often taken for granted that beer should be constantly on tap, but not much is known about the process of the beer turning up from the delivery van to the glass and ensuring that it tastes nice.
The TopBeer Crew have come along to Halesowen, where Paul Hicks and Liz Oakley, who run the Swan on Long Lane, have kindly allowed us the opportunity to grab a brief insight on the workings of their pub cellar.
So, let's go and take a look. Follow me.
Beer is delivered obviously by the drayman. You then drop the kegs down into the cellar, or the casks. Once the beer is entered into the cellar, it is then put into a row with the sell-by dates. Obviously, the ones with the shorter sell-by dates are the ones which are used first. Obviously then, when the cask is ready to be racked up onto the rack, you take the one which is obviously the sell-by date, which is the next one to be used, and then you pick it up and put it onto the rack. That is then left there for 24 hours to settle before it's tapped. Once the cask has been up on the rack for 24 hours, it's ready to be tapped. We'll have a go at this one. Sometimes you get a big spray of beer coming out, sometimes you just get air coming out. As you can see, that one's a little bit lively. Not the worst I've had. And then you get a clean tap, and then you tap, hit it in with a mallet and tap a cask. As you can see, the casks do get a bit lively, and then you stick in a wooden peg to let it settle. Obviously then you've got to keep the area clean, so you've got to wash all the excess beer down off the cask. Obviously the main thing with the cellar is keeping the cellar as clean as you can keep it, to save any germs or cross-contamination with the yeast going into other casks. Some of the casks can be up on the rack, and after 60 seconds, if they're bright casks or fast casks, you should be able to serve the beer straight away. Otherwise, some take up to 1 to 3 days to settle. We'll have a look at one or two here. This one was tapped 24 hours ago, and we'll have a sample of it and check it to see if it's settled. If you hold it up to the light, you can see clearly that the beer itself is clear. Hold your fingers on the back side of the glass. As long as you can see your fingers through the glass, you know that beer is ready for sale. Obviously smell it. Smells nice. Taste it. Even better. That one is ready to go up to the bar to be sold. Once the beer is being taken out to the cask to the customers upstairs, obviously the cask becomes empty, and then what happens, these are on tilt mechanisms, which as the cask empties, the cask lifts and raises, so you get every bit of beer out of your cask. There you are. That is its full tilt. Obviously when it's full, it's back to its resting place. The beer then is pumped up to the bar on the hand pulls using compressed air via all these beer pumps which are located on the back wall of the cellar. You've got one per hand pump. They are driven by the air compressor, which is this machine on this side, which is a main feature within the cellar. Without that, you can do it by using bottles of gas, but this is the workhorse of the cellar. Along with all the cask beer, you obviously got keg beer. You've got your Thatchers, your Star of Pramont, your Carling and your Guinness. These are pumped up with pumps, but obviously you use CO2 and mixed gas for different casks or kegs. CO2 is for your Carling, your Star of Pramont and your Thatchers, and then you've got your mixed gas, which is a 70-30 mix, which is solely for your Guinness. Once the casks or kegs are empty, they're obviously then stacked up, ready for collection by each individual brewery to take them away to be obviously cleaned, refilled, reused.
To your health.
To your health, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
That's a cracking drink, that is.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Some say he survives on a diet of bottle caps and orchid leaves, and that he was born during both World Wars. All we know is the Swig has a fetish for handkerchiefs and bells.
During one of the many festive parties we attended, the TopBeer Crew got into a conversation with Nathan from Green Duck, who informed us of his plans to start a monthly quiz night at the bar starting in the new year. As it happened, both Tone and myself used to run our own pub quizzes back in the day, known as the Kev and Tone Roadshow. Would we be interested in staging this, came the question. You bet we would. and so was born the TopBeer Crew Quiz Night in association with Green Duck Beer Company. The first date was set for Thursday the 28th of January. We planned for 6 rounds to run over 2 hours, hoping that we would eventually get teams turning up. As it happened, 13 teams took part in the event, which we couldn't have been more pleased with. The evening went according to plan and was well received by the audience, with some great feedback returned at the end of the night. The winners of the January quiz night were Team Tanner, who walked away with a gallon of beer, but failed to win the jackpot prize, which rolls over to the second quiz, which will be held on February the 25th. We managed to grab a few words with Nathan from Green Duck at the end of the night.
Thanks tonight, it's been a great night tonight. What made you have a quiz in the first place?
We were looking for ways to open up on a Thursday, so quiz being the first thing, we thought, okay, let's go for it, you know, let's see how it goes and we'll take it from there.
Why did you ask TopBeer Crew down to do it?
It made sense. You guys go round, you like your beers, you know, it's matches, you know, it's a match made in heaven really. You know, guys to go around tasting beer in a brewery doing a quiz.
Perfect, yeah. The first one tonight, how do you think it went?
I think it went absolutely superb.
I agree.
13 teams, you know, you couldn't ask for any more on the first night. You know, when we opened the doors at 7 o'clock, 2 or 3 people walked in and we're thinking, this might be a bad move. But by 8 o'clock, 13 teams, you can't go wrong.
What are your plans for the future for the quiz night?
Quiz-wise, I'm happy for you guys to take the lead. You know, everybody has really enjoyed tonight. They've really enjoyed the cross-section of questions that have been provided. You know, we can add little bits and pieces in here and there, but to be fair, why change something that's turned out as good as it has?
Yeah, that's it's been a great night tonight, yeah. So Nathan, thanks tonight. It's been a great night. Great for TV, so obviously great for Green Duck as well. Thank you, mate.
Yeah, brilliant. Great to see you again.
Well, we reached the end of our show, and we'd like to thank you for watching and hope you've learned something in this episode.
Join us next time when we'll be reviewing the beers of Twisted Barrel Ale Brewery and looking back at our time at Madfest 2 down Coventry.
But until then, keep drinking them real ales and keep sharing on Top Beer. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.